From the day in 1781, when a group of 44 settlers founded the Pueblo de Los Angeles, to today, with our water pipes keep bursting, aging infrastructure, the story of Los Angeles is one of people in need of and in search of water. Hello and welcome to a special episode of Points of Interest. I'm Philip Scorza. Normally, we're on location showing you where our history occurred, but today we've brought history into the SCV TV studio. My guest is Dr. Alan Pollack, the president of the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society. Welcome, Dr. Pollack.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's nice to have you here. I have some things I want to read to you. On March 14th, 1928, the New York Times headlined, 274 perish, 700 missing in torrent loosed by bursting California dam. Further headlines across the nation state, homes, ranches, and roads swept away. Pack trains hunt bodies, and my favorite, towns establish morgues. We are talking, of course, about the collapse of the St. Francis Dam up in San Francisco Canyon. There is currently a drive underway to make the site of California's second worst disaster a national memorial, and Alan is one of the people who has been organizing and lobbying for this to happen. Tell me about the effort so far.
Well, Phil, as you can see, this was a huge national event when it happened 86 years ago.
Right.
But in those ensuing 86 years, it's been virtually forgotten except locally here. This is probably one of the top 25 disasters in all of American history. So a few years back, I actually took a trip out to Pittsburgh, and I got this inspiration or idea from visiting the Johnstown Flood National Memorial Site, which was a big flood that took place in 1889 and killed over 2,000 people.
Right.
And when I looked at those two events and I studied that event, I saw there were so many similarities between these two disasters, between Johnstown and St. Francis. And yet we had the big difference between the two. They had a national memorial with a visitor center, National Park Service, rangers, the whole bit. And what do we have at our site?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
And there hasn't been anything significant there in 86 years. And I felt that to honor the about 431 people that died that evening of March 12, 1928, that it would be great to make that a national memorial.
I think that's a great idea. Now, before we go any further, let's let the people at home hear the whole story of the St. Francis Dam disaster. My ROP class, who's serving as crew here today, has put together a 10-minute video telling the story of the Los Angeles water needs, the collapse of the St. Francis Dam, and its consequences. By the way, the narrative is taken from St. Francis Dam disaster, an extended timeline, written and compiled by Alan here. So why don't we take a look at that now?
The settlement known as El Pueblo de Los Angeles was founded in 1781. From its beginning, survival and growth was defined by the search for fresh water. At the time, the only source for water was the Los Angeles River. Water was carried from the river in a series of ditches and wooden pipes that proved unsanitary. 86 years later, the still struggling city entered into a contract with the private Los Angeles City Water Company to provide fresh water to thirsty Angelenos. Where this water was going to come from was anybody's guess.
In 1877, a 23-year-old Irish immigrant named William Mulholland arrived in Los Angeles. A year later, he began working as a ditch tender. In 8 years, Mulholland worked his way up to superintendent of the Los Angeles City Water Company and began the search for a permanent source of water for the growing city. Another mover and shaker in the search for water was Fred Eaton, a future mayor of the city of Los Angeles. Together, these men traveled to Inyo County, north of the city, and explored the Owens River Valley. It was on this trip that the men devised a plan to bring an unlimited supply of fresh water to LA by building an aqueduct from the Owens Valley to the San Fernando Valley. From 1904 through 1907, the city moved to acquire land and water rights in the Owens Valley. Thirsty Angelenos were twice asked to vote bond measures to finance the huge project, which they did overwhelmingly. Finally, the Los Angeles Times trumpets, Titanic project to give city a river. Unfortunately, this did not go over well with the people in the Owens Valley.
The story of how the aqueduct, described at the time as the largest water project since Roman times, was constructed is one of heroics, strife, and a surprisingly small amount of human tragedy, given the monumental scale of the task and the conditions under which it was built. Construction began in 1907, following a plan devised by the city's top water official, self-taught engineer William Mulholland. The support systems for the project were massive: 500 miles of paved road and railroad, 2 hydroelectric plants, one of the largest cement factories in the world, 240 miles of telephone wire, and more than 2,300 buildings, including warehouses, barns, hospitals, and movable tent houses for workers. At the same time preparatory work was being done, Mulholland sent crews to tackle the project's most difficult task, the boring of the 5-mile Elizabeth Tunnel through the San Gabriel Mountains near Lake Hughes. Drilling holes into the granite for dynamic charges was done with hand tools until an electric plant could be completed to provide power. Even then, the work was so laborious that commonly only 5 feet of progress was made in a 12-hour shift. The project was completed on time and within its $23 million budget.
On November 5th, 1913, 40,000 Angelenos arrived at the Cascades in present-day Sylmar for the grand opening of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. The day is a triumph for William Mulholland and a celebration of great things to come for the people of Los Angeles. Mulholland's address to the crowd is brief. This rude platform is an altar, and on it we are here consecrating this water supply and dedicating the aqueduct to you and your children and your children's children for all time. There is a tremendous roar from the crowd. The good-natured, noisy din subsides when Mulholland stands again and gives the signal for the water to start flowing. 5 men at the top of the concrete gatehouse begin turning the great wheels. The gates lift and the water begins to flow, and once again the crowd goes wild. People rush to the now flowing water to dip cups into it for drinking. Horses rear in fright as the crowd cheers and horns blare. The band plays Yankee Doodle Dandy. Finally, Mulholland turns to the mayor of Los Angeles and says, "There it is, Mr. Mayor, take it." It is truly a great day of joy as the people of Los Angeles realize the bright future that lies ahead of them. Over the next 10 years, LA sees unprecedented growth, but trouble is on the way. By 1923, there have been several years of subnormal snowfall in the eastern Sierras, and the people of the Owens Valley are using the same water LA is. Violence erupts when 40 men dynamite the Lone Pine Aqueduct. 60 to 100 people occupy the Alabama gates, closing the aqueduct by opening the emergency spillway. By July 1927, there have been 10 instances of dynamiting. Mulholland knows Los Angeles has no place to store and hold water, so he begins building a series of reservoirs around LA, including one up little-known San Francisco Canyon. The St. Francis Dam will eventually go down in history as the second worst disaster in the state of California.
In August 1924, construction of the St. Francis Dam begins. It originally was supposed to be 185 feet high, but twice during construction, Mulholland extends its height by 10 feet without increasing the diameter of the base. Other poor decisions are made, including unwittingly building the dam against an ancient landslide on its eastern side. At the beginning of 1926, the St. Francis Dam is completed and water begins to fill the reservoir. 2 years and 6 days later, on March 7, 1928, the St. Francis Dam is filled to just 3 inches below the crest of the spillway. Mulholland orders that no more water be added.
March 12, 1928, 5 days later. At 10:30 in the morning, Tony Harnischfeger, the man in charge of the dam, discovers a leak. He immediately alerts Mulholland, who drives out with his assistant, Harvey Van Norman. The discharge is 15 to 22 gallons per second and muddy. Mulholland feels this is not serious and can be corrected at some future date. That night at 11:57 p.m., the St. Francis Dam collapses. 11:58 p.m., Tony Harnischfeger and his family are the first casualties as a wall of water 140 feet high hits their cottage 1/4 mile downstream from the dam. 5 minutes later, at 12:02 a.m., the flood wave hits and destroys Powerhouse 2, claiming the lives of 64 workmen and their families who lived nearby. The water, now 120 feet high, is traveling down the canyon at approximately 18 miles an hour.
Lyman and Lillian Curtis notice a strange mist in the air and conclude the dam has broken. Lillian and her son, Danny, head for higher ground. Lyman runs back into the house to rescue their daughters. Only Lillian and her son survive. Meanwhile, Ray Rising, another employee, is awakened by a 10-story high wall of water. He is swept into the floodwaters, but somehow manages to climb onto a floating rooftop. He is the only survivor at the power plant.
From 12:05 to 1 o'clock, San Francisco Canyon is ravaged. 6 members of the Ruiz family are killed in the flood. At the base of the canyon, near present-day Tesoro del Valle, the water destroys actor Harry Carey's Navajo trading post, which had been a popular tourist attraction.
1 a.m. The water continues following the now westward course of the river. It demolishes Edison's Saugus substation, leaving the entire Santa Clarita Valley and parts of Ventura and Oxnard without power and in the dark. Highway 99 near today's Magic Mountain is completely underwater, and the Southern Pacific Railroad bridge nearby is washed away.
1:25 a.m. 150 Edison linemen are sleeping in tents beside the railroad tracks immediately east of the Los Angeles-Ventura County line. Night watchman Ed Locke watches in horror as a flood of water approaches the camp at 12 miles an hour. Locke runs through the camp, waking as many people as possible, but 84 workers are killed, including Locke.
1:30 a.m. In Santa Paula, telephone operator Luis Gipe gets a message saying the St. Francis Dam has broken and a wall of water is sweeping down the valley. She and another operator bravely stay at their posts and call residents in low-lying areas, telling them to get to higher ground. California Highway Patrol Officer Thornton Edwards is joined by another officer, Stanley Baker, and the two crisscross the streets on their motorcycles with sirens blaring, awakening the residents to the danger. Many residents are saved as they rush to the hills, only to watch their homes get crushed below.
2:30 a.m. The phone rings at the Mulholland residence. The chief's daughter answers and wakes her father with the horrible news. As he rushes to the phone, he repeats the mantra over and over, "Please God, don't let people be killed." 5:30 a.m. The floodwaters finally empty into the Pacific Ocean near Ventura, washing victims and debris out to sea. It took 5 hours and 27 minutes to travel 54 miles from the dam site to the ocean. The flood is nearly 2 miles wide when it reaches the coast. Bodies of victims would be recovered from the ocean, some as far south as the Mexican border. Many others are never recovered.
Immediately following the dam break, as many as 8 agencies, city, county, state, and federal, begin investigating the cause of the disaster. Mulholland takes full responsibility. "Don't blame anybody else. You just fasten it on me," he says. "If there is an error in human judgment, I was the human." The final jury statement makes national headlines. The construction of a municipal dam should never be left to the sole judgment of one man, no matter how eminent.
Before we talk more about the memorial, let's talk a little bit about the consequences of all of these investigations. How did this change how we do things, building dams and huge projects and stuff like that?
Well, it did lead to new legislation and regulations that really have resulted in great dam safety in dam building since then. We no longer allow one man to make the plans for these dams. It has to go through all kinds of hoops and all to be done. So it really was, in that it was a disaster at the time, it certainly made dams much safer now, so that we don't have such great loss of life, hopefully.
Yeah. One guy can't decide everything.
Right.
In other words, like that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the memorial. We want to do a memorial up in San Francisco Canyon at the site of the dam. What is that going to mean for our area?
Oh, it can mean a lot of things. Firstly, it would be the first time in 86 years that we properly recognize all these poor people that died in the St. Francis Dam disaster. If we get a national memorial, we get the dam site under the National Park Service. This means more funding for preserving the dam site. It could mean a visitor center with museum, documentary, movies, rangers to lead tours, that sort of thing. So it would be really a big tourist boon for us in the Santa Clarita Valley. It would put us on the map. It would put the St. Francis Dam on the map to teach people outside of our local area about this horrible thing that happened 86 years ago.
It would change the area, obviously, if you had something like this. I mean, the immediate area.
Well, as far as for Santa Clarita, it basically puts the equivalent of a national park in our back door.
Oh, yeah, that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So now, who besides, because I know this, who besides Representative Buck McKeon is helping you on this? Who's working with you on this project?
Well, after I had visited the Johnstown site back a few years ago, we have a couple of groups on Facebook that are groups that are of people that are interested in our local history. One of which is Santa Clarita History Buffs, which I started a couple of years back, and we also have a St. Francis Dam Archaeology group, which is specifically people interested in the dam. I started putting out little trial balloons on these groups about maybe we should make this dam site a national memorial. And lucky for me, I ran into one lady who had I had a vision, but I didn't have any way to execute that vision. And I found the person who had the expertise to do that, and that was Diane Erskine Hellriegel.
Okay.
Diane has been involved with legislation and successfully got legislation passed in California for wilderness areas. And she had all the contacts in Washington, everything that I needed to make my vision hopefully happen. Then we also got a committee of people, including Leon Warden and Frank Rock and some others that have been helping us with getting the word out and in the letter campaign that we did to help persuade Buck McKeon to do this legislation.
And he did introduce it in Congress.
He did, yes.
Tell me how I don't know how that process works.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we myself and Diane and Linda Castro, who's a board member on her group that she runs, we traveled to Washington, D.C. in June and met with Buck McKeon's top staff members and presented our idea about the dam. And they were very impressed with it. They were very excited about it. And they talked with Buck, and Buck decided this was a great thing to do, particularly on his way out of office, a great legacy to leave to the people of Santa Clarita. So he introduced a bill in Congress, the St. Francis Dam National Memorial Act, which is currently sitting in Congress, which we are now trying to get passed.
And when you say introduce it, so he gives this to a committee?
Yeah, the bill, when introduced, then goes to this is in the Natural Resources Subcommittee of the House of Representatives, and it sits there until they decide to bring it out of committee, and then it can go to a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. If it gets passed there, then it has to be introduced, the same bill, in the Senate, and it has to be passed there, and then it would go to the president's desk for signing.
Okay. And now we all know that Representative Buck McKeon is leaving office. So what's the next step, basically, that he's leaving?
Yeah, we're very thankful that Buck McKeon introduced this bill. Unfortunately, our time was limited in his reign there. And so it's looking like we will probably have to reintroduce the bill come January when the new Congress meets. And his successor is Steve Knight.
Okay, yes.
And we're going to talk with him and hopefully convince him to go ahead and reintroduce the bill.
Does this mean another trip to Washington for you?
Maybe. We'll see.
Have we talked to him at all about this before?
We have talked with him. He's expressed that he would support it.
Okay.
Although I don't want to speak for him.
Right.
But from what I've understand, that he is amenable to that, and we'll talk with him again and see if we can convince him to do it.
Okay. Now, if anybody at home wants to help or get involved, how do we do that? What do we do?
Well, right now the bill is kind of sitting in that committee, and once we get the bill reintroduced, we will probably be having letter campaigns again to our local congressmen,
Which we've done already.
To help promote this bill. Okay. When we put out the word on that, we certainly would encourage people to help us with letters. That's the main thing we need from the community. That shows the congressman, that shows the Congress that there is the interest in the community here to persuade them to try to pass this bill.
Does the city have any say over this, or the state, or are they on board with it or anything?
The city of Santa Clarita the city council has endorsed the bill.
Oh, good.
We're being actively supported by the mayor, Lorraine West. And not that we don't have the control locally to make this happen. It's a national bill.
Right.
But the city, we are getting the support locally that we need, again, to persuade the Congress to do this.
Okay, very good. Wow, that's terrific. Okay, so, I have a couple of other things because we're running out of time here. I wanted to let people at home know that if they'd like to learn more about the St. Francis Dam disaster or about any of our local history here, we have a wonderful historical society of which you're the president. I'm on the board of directors. Yeah. If they want to know about it, they could go to our website, and I have that's scvhistory.com. So we have stuff on there, and
definitely.
And in putting all of this stuff together, we found out that there's a huge vault of information about the St. Francis Dam that is available to anybody who wants to know the story of it and all that sort of thing.
And we're discovering new things every day.
We are, aren't we? And we should also mention that I think you said this coming March 14th, every March around the time of the disaster, the Historical Society sponsors a little trip up to the dam site.
Yes, that will be led by Frank Rock, who's one of our local dam experts. He's been leading that tour for years. He's really a great lecturer, a great leader on tours, and that'll be March 14th.
March 14th, and so we always start off with a little at the Heritage Junction, which is our headquarters.
Right.
And the dam, I call him the dam man. Frank Rock gives a nice speech. He tells us all about the incident and shares it with us, and then we get on a bus and we go up to the site, and you get to walk around.
You get to walk around and go right up to where the thing happened. Yeah.
And I've been up there. Tell us a little bit about what is up there. What's left of the dam?
What's left up there at this point? There are the base of the dam, which
concrete base.
The concrete base, and there's a wing dike that's up along a hill on the western side of the dam. A lot of this could have been even better preserved, but they chose back in 1928 to dismantle it. Right. Presumably for both safety and maybe PR issues. So we could have had more of it than we have, but it's still significant enough there that it's worth. It really gives you an idea of the immensity of the dam.
And also how it was constructed and how it was the width of that canyon and that sort of thing. Right. It is a fascinating story, and it is part of our legacy here, well, it's just something that we'll just have to keep working on so we can make it a memorial.
We really want to make this happen.
Yeah, it'd be very nice. I'd like to thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
I appreciate that. I have one more quote here and this is taken from what Alan wrote here. Let's see if I could read this to you. Oh, why don't I put my glasses on to do that? That'd be easier. This is from Alan's extended timeline of the St. Francis Dam disaster, and it's at scvhistory.com if you want to look this up. And he wrote, "In Los Angeles, where transgressions are quickly forgotten and celluloid heroes are made, William Mulholland is revered as the superstar who brought LA the water it needed to grow into a major world-class metropolis. The Mulholland Dam in the Hollywood Hills, Mulholland Drive, Mulholland Highway, and the Mulholland Memorial Fountain at Los Feliz are named in his honor." Thank you, Alan, for joining us today, and good luck with your work.
Thank you, Phil.
And we will see you again on Points of Interest. I'm Philip Scorza. Thanks for watching.